good gamers, to yet another episode of the Daily Days Podcast, that retro show that looks back and goes forward with topics both hot and not. I'm Mr. Picario, your humble host on this never-ending quest, and today we're talking Sonic. No, not the fast food, but the little rodent who could, that blue blur that has fascinated fans since Sega's heyday in the early 1990s. And yet, despite the Hedgehog's enduring popularity, his games still vary in public opinion, with some regarded as instant classics and others, well, dismissed as tragic trash. So Sonic was a 90s child, created for the 16-bit Sega Genesis / Mega Drive in 1991, and soon made a pop cultural icon. A phenomenon that soon outgrew his video game roots. Just like Pac-Man, Mario, the Ninja Turtles, and The Simpsons, the Spidey mascot transcended his medium. He zoomed through cartoons, toy stores, and animated films, graced t-shirts and Halloween costumes, and found roost in fast food. He was cool, he was everywhere, and he was fast. But it was also a boost that wouldn't last. If the Genesis marked the Hog's birthplace, the Sega Saturn almost marked his grave. Over the course of the 32-bit age, Sonic barely appeared. And when he did, it wasn't always great. The problem, many say, was 3D, or more precisely, the polygon. Sonic was built with flat 2D landscapes in mind. Left and right, up and down, those cardinal directions are what served the rodent best. Adding the third dimension complicated matters. The Hog was designed and streamlined for a linear world, not one of labyrinthine valleys and free-roaming cameras and drifting around sudden bends. It's probably no coincidence, then, that the Sega Saturn's own original Sonic game was actually a racing title. What else made sense for a character so defined by his namesake, his incorrigible, irrepressible Sonic speed? Not helping, of course, was the Saturn hardware itself. Potentially powerful, but woefully difficult to program for. Creating an open world in which the Hedgehog could run and bound around would have been an arduous task. Ultimately, the duty went to the Sega Dreamcast, a console that delivered two proper Sonic titles. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were fully 3D, and both, compared to the original 16-bit ventures, were kinda weird. Although the developers were finally able to decipher how to translate Sonic's zip and exhilaration to a 3D world, something was still lost in that translation. These new experiences were less about surrealism and precision, and more concerned with story, some free roaming, and mostly roller coaster-esque spectacles of speed. Still fun, but leaving less to the imagination. And yes, some fans complained. Years later, Sega has since split the difference, or rather, the Hedgehog's uneven timelines. Sonic's 2D adventures have since been snipped from his 3D outings, as indicated by Sonic Generations and other games. This means that the 16-bit Sonic of yesteryear is a separate soul belonging to a separate reality from his modern 3D vaulting counterpart. It's a duality that allows Sega to offer both classic and modern takes on the character. Hence, the divergence. 2017's 3D Sonic Forces and 2017's 2D Sonic Mania. 2022's 3D free-roaming Sonic Frontier. and 2023's 2D linear Sonic Superstars. But there was a problem. The old 2D games were already too perfect. There just wasn't enough room for more improvement. It should have been a move that pleased everyone. Those liking the modern, more open-ended Sonic approach would have their needs met, while those who thought the 3D games missed the point could opt for the occasional 2D title, which hewed closer to the original 16-bit material. It was a meeting of dimension and generation meant to please fans of all persuasions. But here's the difference. 3D Sonic has almost endless room for improvement, innovation, and experimentation. And this is seen in numerous Sonic titles, from Sonic the Lost World to Sonic Colors to the aforementioned Sonic Forces. Not all of these games are great exactly, but they are unique, offering clever takes on the typical run really fast dynamic that has always defined the Hedgehog. Not so for the 2D games, though. For better or worse, Sega kind of got Sonic right on the first try. What made the original Sonic the Hedgehog so brilliant was that it did, on that first try, nail everything rather brilliantly. Sure, the sequel added Tails and the Spin Dash and refined some level designs, and Sonic 3 added new shield types and more sophisticated bosses. But, in truth, the growth was more revisionary than visionary. By Sonic and Knuckles, Sega had already perfected the formula. There just wasn't much more to do within the basic Sonic template without drastically changing what made the game, well, Sonic, and fun. Which is why I think 2023's Sonic Superstars struggled. It was a quality release, but next to already finely tuned and perfected games like Sonic Mania, maybe it felt a tad unnecessary. Which is probably why, for the longest time, Sega stayed away from the 2D side of things. What more can really be done with a Hedgehog that runs really fast? At least in 3D, the opportunities for new obstacles and challenges are greater. In other words, the formula flexes better in 3D than 2D, the latter becoming calcified due to a lack of new, invigorating ideas. Even Sonic Mania, as brilliant as it is, has to rely heavily on the past, with most of its levels being remixed versions of what already came before. It's a pick-your-poison situation, really. 3D Sonic titles stumble all the time, but at least offer new experiences. 2D Sonic games tend to make less mistakes, but also always feel a bit derivative. Been there, done that. It's a conundrum I'm not sure Sega will ever fully solve, for it's a reality intrinsic to the character and gameplay. Sonic was built for speed and simplicity, which made him instantly accessible and fun, but not exactly deep, and that can be disastrous for sequels needing a reason to exist. Compare this with Nintendo's own Mario, who's much more versatile and can lend himself to a more fluid variety of mechanics. In short, Mario can go slow and fast, but Sonic, it's either fast or it's bust. And so concludes another episode of the Daily Days. As always, thanks for listening, and for those interested, my website, lostnostalgia.com, has plenty more news and retrospectives on almost anything considered old school and wistful. So check it out if you're at work or otherwise bored. Again, that's lostnostalgia.com. Until next time then, this is Mr. Picario signing off for now.